Hello, this is Dan Pro. Welcome to my Blender rigging channel. This is part 2 of my advanced deformation tutorial series. In this tutorial I want to show you a very common problem area for getting good deformations, and that is usually right between the thighs and the shins, and also it happens quite often in the elbow area between the upper arm and the lower arm. Now I call this problem scissoring because that's what it reminds me of. As we rotate our shin up, you can see that these bones basically scissor together, and there's just no avenue of escape for our character mesh, and we get a very severe intersection problem. Now we should be able to rotate our shin up to a level where we can touch the backside of our buttocks with the heel of our foot, and most rigs just don't, as you can see, just don't handle this very well, and I find that very distressing. This is actually a very personal pet peeve of mine when deformations don't look good in this way. For my advanced rig over here, notice I can rotate this up, touch the backside of the buttocks with the heel, and that mesh intersection problem is not happening. This looks far more appealing and more natural. Now what's basically causing this is typically when we rig our characters and our creatures, we are rigging our shins with a single point of rotation, and that's actually not what happens in real life on our own bodies. So if we take a look at some anatomy reference here, notice on the bottom of the thigh bone there's actually a large mass of bone down here, and as we rotate our shin up, we don't have a static point of rotation for that shin. The shin actually slides, that rotation point actually slides around that mass at the end of the thigh bone. So if we were to introduce a little bit of location as well as rotation to our character rigs, we'll probably get a better deformation. And I can actually kind of prove this just by taking this shin bone and moving it out away, and you'll notice that that deformation immediately becomes better. Now we need to find a way where we're not going to, we can make the deformation happen, we can move that away, but in a way that's not going to wreck any IK or FK rigs. It's going to need to be seamless and basically invisible to the animator. So over here, notice that I have a static rotation point for the control of the shin bone, but the deformation bone behind the scenes is actually moving out in a way, and that's what's allowing me to get this better deformation over here. So this is actually a very simple thing that we can set up. Let's go to our character rig from the first tutorial series. First thing I want to do is get rid of the mechanism bones from my socket rig. I'll just move them to another layer. I'm going to get my end panel out here. Now from here on out, for the rest of this tutorial series, I will be building all of our deformation bones on a very simple set of bones here. You'll notice that I named them intermediate thigh, intermediate shin, and etc. Now this intermediate bone eventually is going to be hooked up to an IK and an FK switchable rig. So it's going to be very important, no matter what control system we need to use, to make our deformation bones work on the locations, rotations, and scales of this very simple set of bones. So I will basically just be rotating these as an FK chain, but in a larger rig I will actually hide these bones, name them MCH, intermediate thigh, etc., and they will be doing the switching between the FK and IK rigs. But for this tutorial series, we're basically just going to be working on this simple set of bones to get the deformation bones to automatically work correctly. So with that out of the way, brace yourselves, because this is going to be a very difficult rig to make. We're going to need one extra bone and one extra constraint, so not very tough. I'm going to go into edit mode of my armature, select my intermediate shin bone, Shift D to make a duplicate, an exact duplicate, Alt F to flip that duplicate 180 degrees. Basically it's just flip the head and tail positions. I'm going to rename this to Def Shin. Next I'm going to parent Def Shin to the intermediate shin, Control P, keep offset. Now back in pose mode, as I mentioned, we're going to need one extra constraint. As I rotate the intermediate shin bone up, notice that I'm getting a negative value here. So as I rotate it up, I want the actual deformation bone to rotate out and away. Now by rotating it out and away from this point down here, we're not going to introduce anything weird to the foot. We're not going to add any weird counter animation problems here, but it's just going to give us distance between the joint of the thigh bone and also the joint of the shin bone. Let me clear out that rotation. Now I'm going to do this automatically with a transformation constraint. The intermediate shin bone is going to be the target of the constraint. The deformation shin bone is going to get the constraint. Shift Control C. I'm going to add transformation constraint. So constraints with targets. That just fills in the target information up here automatically. Now for my transformation constraint, we are going to use rotation to rotation. It's going to be X rotation to X rotation, so we don't need to change anything up here. And then we're going to use the local space rotation of our intermediate shin bone to the local space rotation of our deformation shin bone. Next, we just need to input the right values. When I rotate the intermediate shin from a maximum of 0 to negative 160, I want the deformation bone. If I just rotate this out, you'll see that that's giving me a negative value as I rotate it out. I want that to go from 0 to about negative 6 to negative 8. I'll use negative 8. Oops, negative 8. Go the other direction. Make sure you have your proper values there. And now this is completely automated. As I rotate up, it's just going to rotate very slowly and outward and give me the ability to give me some distance on our mesh and solve that intersection problem. Now I wish this was more complicated than that, but seriously, that is it. That is all there is to it to create that better deformation. Now, I know having the deformation bone flipped upside down like this is going to be really weird, especially for those of you that have some experience with rigging, but trust me, this is not going to cause any problems. It does not matter that the bone is flipped upside down. It's the movement of the bone that's important, and we are getting that automatically with the movement of this, or the rotation of our intermediate shin bone. Now, if it does bother you to the extent where you just can't get your head around this, you could do this by selecting this bone and scaling it down. I would rename this to something like MCH ankle or something of that nature, and you could just take another duplicate of the shin bone and parent that. Let me get the right one here. Parent that to that mechanism bone with keep offset, and basically you have the same setup with an extra bone, but then you don't have to look at that weird upside down bone. So basically you're having the same thing, but as I mentioned, it's just really not necessary to do that, so I'll back that up to get rid of that. So that is it. That is our anti-scissoring rig, and we'll be building the rest of our mechanisms kind of on top of that. I like to have this set up as well up here in the forearm. It's going to be identical. You're just going to create a duplicate of the forearm bone, flip it, add your transfer or parent it to your intermediate bone, add your transformation constraint, and that's it. You're done. So I hope these tips help. Until next time, good luck.